Okay, so here's the top of my fountain, bird bath, and I want to show you how I color it before I move it and before I grind on the top. I'll get the grinder out and shape the top exactly the way I want it and cut the top of my water tube off where I want it. And I ordered a pump for it, and it'll be here tomorrow. I'm going to put a new one in it. And I'm going to go with 190 gallons a minute, and then I should be able to adjust that up or down. So I have a bucket, and in this bucket I have probably 4 cups of water. And this is cement dye. I have some brown. It's just the brown and some buff. And I am going to put a few drops of this color into this water, and then I'm going to use the brush to kind of put streaks on it and just let it run down. So, shake this up, it's pretty thick, but it's kind of separated. So, this is kind of experimental. I've done this different ways, and I'm just pouring enough in there so that it should be good and brown, but not just really thick paint or dye. On the last bird bath, I put this in the cement on the last layer, where I mixed up a layer to put over the top, like the third layer I did here. And when I did that, it just made all of that cement that color of brown. And I kind of like a little bit of, actually, I am going to put some of this on. I got enough water in this pan, and I'm going to put a little of that in there so that I have 2 different colors that I can do with the brush. And they'll kind of intermix, but because this is cement dye or concrete dye, it does kind of absorb right into the concrete with the water. So it doesn't just dye the surface. If I did paint, paint doesn't soak in unless you mix it with water. And if you mix it with water, you can get it to, what do I want to say, absorb into the cement. If I'm doing it with paint, I use a latex or acrylic paint, so water-based, and it'll help seal the bird bath. So you can just, I'll turn this around so you can see it. I mix like 1 part water to 4 parts paint, or sorry, the other way around. 1 part paint, and just make a small batch, because you're going to do it a little thicker next time. But if you do 1 part paint and 4 parts water, with the first time, and spray your bird bath down first, and then when you've got it sprayed down so it's all nice and wet, then you can paint your mixture on, and just do several coats. Let it soak in, dry, and do another coat, and do another coat until you run out of that paint. And what happens is that soaks into your cement, and then it, instead of just an acrylic seal on the outside of it, it forms, the cement sinks into the concrete and hardens so that the paint is part of the outer shell, and it sinks in a ways into your cement. So if you do that and it sinks in really good, and you do 3 or 4 coats, let it dry and do it again, and then you can get a little thicker and a little thicker mix. And when you do that, you'll end up with something really cool. It'll be really well sealed. It'll last for years. The paint won't ever chip off. I don't know, if he makes statues or little figurines and stuff out of cement, but if you were ever to make a little dog or mushroom for your yard and you did that, it would seal it up real good, and it wouldn't peel and fade and come to pieces in a few years. It would be pretty solidly done. So anyways, I learned that from a guy who did statues years ago, and his were known for not coming apart, and the paint didn't ever come out of it, and I had bird baths that I was eager to put water in, and things that really came apart, peeled, chipped. I've used resin, pick up the whole top layer, just bubble off with it, because didn't get enough time to say cure for a week or something like that before I put water in it. But these bird baths, when I do this, and then when I'm done with getting the color kind of the way I want it, just want it to kind of look like wood, and a mixture or variation of wood colors kind of makes it blend into the scenery and look kind of natural. So anyway, when I've done resin on there, on the sides, it lasted. And when I've let it set and cure for a while, it's lasted. When we put cold water and leave it out all winter, that's when it starts popping off. And it's just because it wasn't made for 10 below zero with water in it. So that being said, we do live in Colorado, so if you live in Florida or someplace where you never see frost, it may stay forever. I thought it should seal it for years and years, but it was just a matter of didn't like the cold. So I think I've got enough soaked up in here that it should soak in pretty deep. I don't want it to look too painted. I just make sure all the cement's covered. Missed a spot. Anyways, I use a clear sealer. It's Rust-Oleum, and it's just clear. Painted on kind works better than the spray can. But you can use either, and I just give it a couple coats just because. If it's the spray kind, I give it a couple coats. If it's the paint on kind, I just give it one good coat. And it lasts a long time. My bird bath in the front yard I made 4 years ago, and it's frozen. It's had ice so thick in the tube that I thought it could have broke that, but I started putting those little, just a little pet water heater like you'd get for a reptile cage, and one that's made to be submerged in water, and that works. It keeps the water just warm enough so that it can keep bubbling out of there, and if the reservoir is below the ground, it stays a lot warmer because the ground insulates it. So anyway, because I rent, I can't show you, I can't dig a big hole to make a reservoir anywhere in this yard that I can think of. So I will just show you how to do it above the ground like you do it under. So anyway, it's a bad habit of mine saying anyway all the time, but I'm gonna try to break that habit so it doesn't have to be heard on videos 5,000 times. So thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing, and I can show you how to make leaf bird baths, and I've made big elephant ear leaves and just all kinds of shapes and hibiscus flowers that make awesome bird baths for hummingbirds. So I have the tools to do that in the next few weeks, so I will try to get that done. And in the meantime, I'm going to let this dry, then I'll clean out my pan and just grind the top down and cut the hose off, and tomorrow I might let it dry overnight, and tomorrow I'll seal it, grind the top and seal it, and then hook it up. So have a great day. Thanks for watching. Good morning, this is Joanne, Colorado. My bird bath has set, the mortar for 24 hours, and I did use a little more of the darker brown stain just on a little brush mixed with water, so I could just kind of add a little color to the texture. It was kind of blending in too much. Needed a little bit of variation. Anyways, as the water flows over it, it'll get even better. But my clear paint that I was gonna use today with a brush, where I thin it down and then brush it and then let it soak in, was empty, so I'll have to do that at a later date. Doesn't matter, but it would probably be fine just the way it is. But I did use 1 can of Rust-Oleum just to give it a clear outdoor sealer. Sprayed over just one time, and it was a little glossy, so anyways, it'll help the texture of looking wet when the water's running over it, and it'll help algae and stuff like that not stick into the cement. So the next thing to do is to check the level, because I need it level on the edges. Not bad for just smearing cement on stuff, huh? Anyways, That's one direction. And this is the direction that's kind of the worst. And the cement down underneath it's a little bit slanted. Actually, so that end is a little higher, because if I level it out for the sidewalk, it would be even a little bit taller on that end. So I'm going to level this, and then I'm going to grind down into this area to make it about a 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch lower than the edges. I don't want this edge up here to be so shallow that only hummingbirds use it. So I'm going to get the grinder out. It's a dusty, messy job and loud, so I will do it without the camera, and I will show you what it looks like when I'm done. And then I'll cut off that pipe coming out too. And the pump's getting here today in the mail, so, or Amazon delivering, so we'll be able to set it up and see how it runs. Be back in a little bit. So I'm using this little Ryobi grinder. Has a grinding wheel for cement. It's about worn down. I get all the use out of them, boy, I tell you. Anyways, here's how it's looking so far. Raised lots of dust. As you can see, that is all the deeper it is right at the moment. And I could not find my mask, which is a bad thing. Always use a mask when you use a grinder. I used to work in a rock shop where I had to use grinders and Dremels and stuff on fossils all day long. And for 8 years I breathed that air. Anyways, got a ways to go. But anyways, I breathed that air until one day I couldn't breathe in the shop at all, so it was in the olden days when they didn't have that great of ventilation, and I wouldn't recommend it to anybody because it did a lot of damage to my lungs. Gave me lots of allergies. It makes me cough a lot. And it is 35 years later. So anyways, protect your lungs, because you're going to need them one of these days. And it's no fun sounding like you're, I don't know, coughing and coughing and coughing all the time. Especially around COVID. Oh my goodness, everybody thought that I was, had COVID, and all I did was have allergies to dust and to dirt and to cement and to rock dust. So anyway, you didn't need to hear all that probably, but in the case for your lungs, maybe you'll remember it. So I am going to make this deeper, and I'll be back. Now, if I can get a hold of this, I just wanted to show you, I guess, the angle that I use this at. I hold it and I use it like this around, and I try not to hit the outside edge. Oops. Let's try that again. I try to sweep it around like this and then use it more in the center like this, but to keep the edge as high as it is, I try not to hit it. Now, and check the level and see if I'm gaining on depth. I would say that is probably close to a ½ inch there. At different angles, it's going to be a little bit deeper, but I think we'll give that a try. And after the water's in it, I'll see if it's enough. If it's not, we'll lower it. I just don't want to grind down into the wire mesh. So I got to remember that. Keep that in mind. So, and I think for a garden fountain, that's probably close enough to level. So I will be back when I get the pump in the mail. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye. Good morning. This is Joanne in Colorado. I am wanting to say good morning, and we got our pumps, and I got the fountain ready, the bird bath ready to be able to hook up, and so I wanted to show you what I got here, so that you could see what kind of pump it is and things before I hook it up. So I'm gonna swap the camera so you can see what we got. I ordered this off of Amazon. I believe it was like 15 or 17 after shipping. The reason I got this, and it's the first time I've gotten this size of pump, is because before, the size pumps that I had were like 300 gallons per hour, or they were 80, and this was 180. So the other ones that are 300 are just a little too strong, and they want to blast water a foot above the fountain. So this one is adjustable, this little side adjustable thing here. You can see in the bottom, if I adjust this back and forth, it'll almost close. Get this in the light. There we go. I noticed it almost closes it completely. So you can snug it down, or you can open it wide up. That's wide open. And this closes them down. So we've got a whole lot of room there. Has suction cups so that you can, it'll hold it a little ways off the bottom, but it'll hold it upright. So we have a bird bath. I did get it ground down so that there's space space in there for water. I have a reservoir here. What I wanted to show you is, if you have a spot where you can dig down in your ground, then you can get a strong wire mesh. This one isn't really strong enough, unless you had, if you had bricks in the center underneath this, and then just cut a hole right under here so that you could have the pump hose come out of there. You'd set that below the ground, and you'd leave this edge of this pan, you would leave the edge of the pan a little higher than the ground. Put that on there, and then just cover the top of it with rocks around there, different size rocks, so that it kind of blends with the ground there, and you can tell that it's a feature, but you want just the water from the fountain draining into your pan. You don't want to have a whole bunch of water from outside the ground running off and running down into there, because then you'll have a whole bunch of mud. But anyways, it wouldn't be too hard to dig a hole, 6 inches deep. And that's an 8-gallon reservoir, which will last this bird bath for days and days and days and weeks and a month. You just want it set up so that maybe you can fill it up enough to run any junk out of there if you want to clean it. And if you just have a mesh hole, you could even siphon the water out somehow. Maybe a fish tank siphon, and just leave yourself a hole for that under a big rock or something, and then you wouldn't have to even worry about it. So we are going to get this connected, and give me a minute to get this ready, and I'll put it so that we can see it on camera while I do it with my hands.